Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to convert a standard activity-based Android app to an app that uses fragments. And the app for this exercise is going to be the blood pressure app, which you should have downloaded from D2L. All right, this is what the app looks like when you're running it. What it basically does is it diagnoses a blood pressure reading. So, for example, if you have a reading of 120 over, let's say 80, and we click diagnose, you get a categorization for this reading, which is prehypertension, and then you get a follow-up recommendation. In this case, it says blood pressure is rechecked in 1 year and advice about lifestyle changes is provided. Okay, and all of this is coded up. There is support for rotation as well. Okay, but notice that the follow-up recommendation gets truncated, and that is not desirable. Okay, so we're going to restore this to its profile orientation. And let's take a look at the code. Let me open those up. Right now, this is the project. We're looking at the project tool panel, and there are two classes. This app is implemented using the model view controller paradigm. So there is a model class, and that's called blood pressure, and it is essentially composed of two string arrays, and then there is a method that compares the two readings, the systolic and diastolic readings, and then returns an index into these two string arrays. These are two parallel string arrays. So they, each element in the array goes with the element in the other array. The first array is the categories, and the second array is the recommendations. The other class is the usual activity class in Android. Of course, these are both in Java. And this class has two methods. It has an onCreate method where we wire up the widgets, and it has a save instance state method to handle device rotation. There are several widget declarations right at the top of the class, and there is a variable that holds the returned category value from the blood pressure BP method call. Okay. Also, if you take a look at the on-click listener for the diagnose button, right now, right here, it retrieves the values from the input fields. It then calls the BP method in the blood pressure class. This is a static method call. It returns the category value after comparing the systolic and diastolic readings. Then we set the text output views with those array, indexed into the array. Now, there's a catch here. We're trying to catch because the parse-in could theoretically and potentially throw either a null pointer exception or a bad input field exception, which I believe an illegal argument exception. So we need to trap for those. And if any, for example, if you were to click the diagnose button without entering in any values, we would an exception would be thrown, and we would catch for that, and then we would display this error message in the in the category field. So for example, if I were to eliminate this string and click diagnose, we get this error message right here. Input fields must contain numbers. Okay, so let's modify this so that so this app will now use fragments. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to create two fragment classes. And the way we do that is we're going to right-click on the package name. And we're going to come down here, select New, select Fragment, and select Fragment Blank. The first fragment is going to be called Input Fragment, and I'll explain what these fragments correspond to. We're going to turn off fragment factory methods because we don't really need those. It's going to be a lot of code that is we're not going to be using. You might be using these in a more sophisticated app, but for our simple demonstration app here, we won't need them. And so we're going to click Finish. And as you can see, we have a Java class added here, and we will also have a layout. Okay, so let me explain what we're gonna add another fragment class in a second. But before we do that, I'm going to explain how we're going to divide up these fragments. Fragments are a way to modularize your application, your application's user interface. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our blood pressure interface and we're going to divide it into two fragments. The first fragment is going to contain these first 5 widgets. It's going to contain the systolic input field, this edit text field, the diastolic edit text field, the diagnose button, this static text view, and then this other text view, which we're going to use for output. That's going to be the first, the very first fragment here. And in the linear layout, that's going to be these 5 widgets right here. These 5 widgets are going to be our first fragment. And then the second fragment is going to be these 2 bottom widgets. And they're both text views. One is static. It's essentially the header, the heading of the output field here, and then the recommendation, the follow-up recommendation. Okay, so we've created one fragment, and so now we're going to create the other fragment. And once again, we're going to repeat that process. We're going to right-click on the package name under the Java folder in the project. We're going to select New. We're going to mouse down here to Fragment and select Fragment Blank. We're going to call this fragment a follow-up fragment, like so. We're going to uncheck the factory methods and the interface callbacks, and we're going to select Finish. And so now we have 2 fragments, and they're pretty much empty. So when we look at them, here, let's take a look at the layouts. As you can see from the layouts here, there's just a little hello text there. We're going to get rid of that, and clearly the same for the other fragment, for the input fragment and the follow-up fragment. If we look at the Java class for these fragments, we're going to see that 2 methods have been added that don't do very much. We have a constructor, a default constructor, and then we have an onCreateView. Fragments use an onCreateView to wire up widgets as opposed to an onCreate in an activity. there is an onCreate method in a fragment, but the wiring up of the widgets is done in the onCreate view, and we're gonna do that right now. So what we're gonna do is we're going to we'll do the input activity first, and then we'll do the input fragment first, and then we'll do the follow-up fragment second. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the activity layout, and we're going to click on the text, and we're going to select the first 5 widgets. So we're going to select the first edit text, the second edit text, the button, the next text view, and then the text view after that, right up to category text here. And we're going to cut that out. And now I'm going to go to fragment input, and I'm going to click on the text view, and I'm going to replace this text view here with what we cut from the activity layout. And I'm going to paste, and there we go. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to, in this segment layout or fragment layout, I'm going to change the frame layout to linear layout. And I'm going to make its orientation vertical. Okay, and so now if I take a look at this, we will see that we have a layout that looks a lot like, looks exactly like this first part here of the app. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to, and actually wire these up within the fragment. And to do that, we're going to click on the main activity on Create, and I'm going to cut the relevant widget declarations here. Let me just start from that. There we go. I'm going to cut these 4 widget declarations, and I'm going to put them in the onCreate view here. Oops, sorry, right at the top. Right there. When I do that, when I paste those in, I immediately get a request from Android Studio. Do I want to import the relevant import files? And I do, so I'm going to click yes, and those get added. All right. And another thing we want to edit here is we're going to come down to onCreate view in preparation of copying in or cutting and pasting in the wiring up of these widgets. We're going to replace this return with a view equals. onCreate view has to return a view, and so we're going to do this, and we're going to insert the wiring up of the widgets right in between these 2 lines. So I'm going to go back to my main activity, and I am going to select the wiring up here. You notice that some of these variables are highlighted in red because their declarations are missing. I'm going to cut this out. Okay. And I'm going to go back to my input fragment, and in between these 2 lines, I'm going to paste. Okay, now you notice that the find by view ID calls are highlighted in red. We need to precede those with the view. Find view by ID is a member method of a view. A fragment, interestingly enough, is a fragment class, as we see here, is not a view, and so we need to prefix all of these find view by ID calls with this with our view variable. Also, you notice that mCategory is highlighted in red. That's because we need to copy that over as well. So I'm going to come over here to main activity and copy that. I'll combine, or I'll switch between using the pop-up menu and the shortcut key Control X. Let's come back here. Let's add this there. We're going to add M category right after the widget declarations. Follow-up text view is no longer relevant in this first fragment. Comment that out. Comment that out. All right. And that should do it for our input fragment. Now we're going to repeat this process for our second fragment, the follow-up fragment. So we're going to go to the activity again. You'll notice that the follow-up fragment again has that similar initial layout. And we're going to go to the activity main, which now only has these two widgets. And so we're going to take these out. Cut those out. And we're going to go to the follow-up fragment. Go to text. I'm going to replace the text view with what we just cut out. I'm going to change the frame layout to linear layout. I'm going to make the orientation vertical again. And if we look at the design, we'll notice that our second fragment looks like these last two values here, this last part there. So we're going to keep that as it is, and now we're going to wire up the widgets in the follow-up fragment. Again, we're going to come to our main activity, and we are going to take our widget declaration. I'm going to Control X that to copy it out. I'm going to go to the follow-up fragment, and right here at the top of the class, I am going to enter Control V to paste the text view widget. It's asking me to import the text view widget. Yes, I want to. Okay. Now we're going to go back to main activity, and we're going to take this this wire up here and Control X, copy it out, go back to follow up fragment, and you know what? I'm going to just paste it right after this right here. We need to do our replacing the return with the view equals. We're going to put that view prefix right there, and we're going to return the view from our onCreateView method call. Okay, and so that pretty much completes the creation of the second fragment. Now we need to clean up our main activity, both the Java code and the fragment. We're going to do device rotation handling slightly differently in this app. We're not going to handle device rotation in fragments the way we do it in activities. So we're going to comment this code out. I'm going to select it, press Control / to comment that out. We no longer really need this onSave instant state, so we're going to comment that out as well. Okay, and that, yeah, that's okay. I'm not sure why it's complaining there. Class or interfaces. Let's see, what is, that should be okay. We no longer need this as well. I'm not sure why it's complaining. Maybe we need to maybe we need to resync. So let's try resyncing. Let's see if that makes a difference. and hopefully it will. And it is still complaining. Let me uncomment that. Let's, we don't need that. So let's comment that out. And I'm just going to stick with that comment. I know that's an error. Let's stick with that for just a moment. And let's also fix up the, let's just stick with that because I think that's just a synchronization error. So let's go back to, we'll find out for sure in a minute. Now what we need to do is we need to add 2 fragments to the linear layout, or sorry, to the main activities layout. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to just do that right here. I'm going to select layouts, and I'm going to drag, so you can see the fragment here at the end, at the bottom. I'm going to drag that to there. You notice that it pops up a list of fragment classes that are in my app. The ones that have the yellow background here are part of the Android SDK library. The ones in white are the ones that we created. So I'm going to select the first one that I created, the input fragment. Click OK, and then I'm going to add a second fragment, and that's going to be my follow-up fragment, and that's OK as well. We want these to fill up the entire screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the attributes to these guys. And first I'm going to change the fragment ID to fragment input. I'm going to change the height to match parent. And I'm going to change the layout weight to 1. And you'll see in a second why I'm doing that. And I'm going to similarly do the same here. I'm going to call this one fragment follow-up. I'm going to change the height to match parent. I'm going to give the layout weight 1. And you notice that with an equal layout weight of 1, both of these fragments will share the screen, the parent proportionally, the parent view, or the parent layout. And so we have our first fragments set up and laid out, and this is still problematic. Let's see if this will build. Oh, I see what the problem is. You know what? Let's stop that. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I didn't comment this line. This needs to be commented out right here. Great. Okay. There we go. This is yeah. Let's try building. Let's stop the current running app and let's run this one. Let's see. It's still complaining a little bit, but let's see if that goes away. And it should. Okay. Oop, it failed. Why did it fail? 1, 2. Oh, I think we need one more. Okay, there we go. No, that got rid of all the errors. Okay, great. Now let's run it. All right, and so as you can see, our app looks the same with all of those changes. But we're now displaying our widgets in 2 fragments as opposed to a single activity. All right, and functionality is going to be the same here. Okay, but you notice there's no follow-up recommendation. We're going to address that in another video where we discuss fragment communication. Okay, right now these are 2 separate fragments. We're handling the input in the first fragment, but we're not communicating the handling of that input to the second fragment, and we're going to discuss that and show how to do that in another video. But one of the last things we want to handle or take care of in this particular video is rotation, or at least of the very rudimentary aspects of rotation. And so if we rotate this, we don't get a good looking display here. We get there are 2 values. We have the diagnose button, but our category display has been truncated, and the follow-up recommendation has overlapped to the bottom part of the first fragment. So what we need to do here is we're going to put the first fragment on the left side of the screen and the follow-up recommendation fragment on the right side of the screen. And we're going to do that by repositioning. We're going to recreate, or rather create, an orientation, a landscape orientation layout, and reposition the fragments on the landscape orientation layout. And to do that, we're going to, we're good there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to our activity, and as you can see, we have a portrait orientation. We are going to create a landscape variation, and by doing, I'm going to click on the orientation button here, and click on Create Landscape. You'll notice that it automatically populates the layout with the 2 fragments. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to change the orientation from vertical to horizontal. And you'll see that we have 2 fragments side by side here. That's what we want. And so if we now run this, we should see when we rotate the device, we should see that the 2 fragments are completely visible side by side. So let's let this run. Okay, looks fine. In portrait, okay, looks fine in portrait. And if we rotate this, you can see that we have, we can completely see our first fragment, and we can completely see our rightmost fragment. We've lost our content here because we need to handle the rotation fully to redisplay the the content after the activity gets destroyed on rotation. But that covers the basics for converting an activity to one that to an app that has an activity and 2 fragments. And these fragments, by the way, are static layout fragments. In yet another video, I will show you how to create dynamic runtime fragments. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching.